we have a sister, Hina Zuberi, who's here, who's going to help us enhance our phone banking skills. Sister Hina is the Director of Advocacy for Justice for All, a human rights organization focused on anti-genocide and minority rights work. She is also the editor-in-chief of Muslim Matters and the lead anchor for Muslim News on Muslim TV Network. Sister Hina?
And before Hina starts, I do want to say one thing, because I know that many of you have been watching Hina's other webinars that have been going throughout the country. But I will say that all good things come from Michigan, and this is a step above all the rest of them, just so everybody knows that Hina has actually catered today's presentation to the enormous amount of work that you all have been doing here in Michigan. So we are going to hand it over to Hina.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Subhanallah. I am, I was texting them, don't stop her. She's gone, mashallah. And Sister Rashida, that you just so much affirmed so much of the training that I'm about to be giving. So alhamdulillah, may Allah accept, inshallah. I'm going to share my screen. So if you guys could.
You should be able to right now.
Thank you. This. Oops. Let me just get back to the beginning. Okay. So we're going to be talking about congressional advocacy and phone banking, and specifically in Michigan. You guys have been doing such an amazing job. I've heard the past 2 months, phone banking has been going on strong. And I think you all have the largest number of state senators or state representatives that have signed on for a ceasefire in probably the country. So, great work at the local and state level, and we just need to keep pushing at the federal level. So thanks for the introduction. I just want to drop my email address in case you guys have any further questions, you need help setting agendas, setting leave behind packets, any of that, when we get you guys all into these district offices, just like Rashida said. So just wanted to reaffirm what we are doing is so important, because individually, none of us could be doing and getting anything happening, right? So the man that Linda referred to and Imam Imran referred to, he was doing that individually, so the change would not happen within him. But we do have the energy, the possibility of making change. And I really, really want all of you to believe that, even in the darkest hours, when it seemed like our country is going to, won't use that word, but you know what I mean. Like sometimes you're like, whoa, where am I? And what am I doing? And what is wrong with our country? And this is like, I love this, this graphic, because this is all of you. When the problem seems so large that we believe that we cannot handle it, that's when all of us get together and we become larger than the problem. And I do believe that change. I have never seen people so activated, especially in the Muslim community, especially in allies, like in decades. And this is the time. And what I would want you to take away from this training and what you learn from here is not just for today. We are not going to stop at ceasefire. The skills that you learned today, the phone banking that you're doing, you can use this for any issue where you need people to gear up, whether it's a pothole outside your street, on your street, or it's to defund the Israeli military. Inshallah. So what is phone banking? Usually, most phone banking that possibly you all may have heard of, those of you who are new to this. In fact, I'd like to get a show of hands. How many of you are totally new to phone banking, have never done it before? It's okay. You can raise your hand. No one's judging. Okay. So this is great. From what I can see is that everybody here has been active in phone banking. So many of you get calls during like getting out the vote season. You'll have people calling you, asking you to vote for a certain person or making sure that you're registered to vote. So that's one kind of phone banking. And what we've been doing has been phone banking for lobbying. This is a lobbying strategy, and it's using to connect supporters to their elected officials in order to drive mass lobbying efforts. This is just the Hill. I'm right here in DC, so this is my backyard. And we have the Senate and the House of Representatives, and how many of you have actually been to any lobby days, whether it's been organized by your state organizations or coming up to DC for some national organizations that come out. So if you could give me a show of hands, folks, if you have gone lobbying together as a group. Okay, that's great, a fair number. And I really, really encourage people to do that. That is something, it's a great opportunity to meet like-minded people. It really gives you a feel of, but you don't have to come to DC. You can do that locally at your district offices, and we're going to get into that a little bit after that. So currently, this is our current Congress. We have, this is how our Senate is laid out. We have a slight majority of in Senate of Democrats, and the House is ruled by the Republicans. So I'm going to quickly, this is just another, this is us with Rohingya and Uyghur leadership up on Capitol Hill trying to stop those genocides. So if you do get a chance, please do come out when there's going to be lobby day. There has been in the past, and there are going to continue to be lobby days or fly-in days. And this really makes a difference because they get to see you face to face, hear your stories, and they know that you took the time and the money and the effort to come into the capital of our country, and it really does make a difference. So if you ever get the chance, again, I'm going to say that, to do come out and come visit us on Capitol Hill. So what have we seen so far? One, we are right now in crisis mode. Crisis hit. Israel starts bombing Gaza after October 7th. And this is not the beginning, as all of you know. This is a continuation of the occupation, continuation of what has been transpiring for more than 75 years. But how does our Congress respond? We see Republicans race to be seen as the most pro-Israel possible. We see bipartisanship on Stand With Israel. We see Squad and Squad Adjacent trying to bring in nuance about Palestinians. And then we saw, just amazing, courageous Cori Bush introducing the Ceasefire Now resolution, which is HR 786. And then we see our sister Rashida demonized and punished. And so all of this was happening. And then we saw this HRES 888 pass, which is a resolution, and it passed 412 to 1. And the language that was being used in this resolution was equating any anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism. And many of you are rightfully very, very concerned about this bill. And some of the questions that we've been getting is, what's the difference between a bill and a resolution? What we can say about this one is this was a resolution. It was not a bill. And we're going to go into what are the differences. But I can assure you, coming January, we will probably see a bill that has these exact same sentiments in it, which could make it into law. So we have a lot to fight. Ceasefire is just the beginning, and that's one message if you take away from us today, is that this is just the beginning. We also saw the executive branch use its powers to initiate, which can, foreign policy through responses to foreign events. On October 20th, we saw our president make a request for emergency supplemental funding. And as part of his $1.5 billion emergency war request, we saw him ask for a legal loophole that would give money to the military instead of using terminology such as quote unquote grants. And this was a legal loophole. So I just wanted to paint the picture, what is going on in DC, so you all are aware at what impact your calls have. So let's go back to this question. What is the difference between a bill and a resolution? So a bill is a form used for most legislation, whether it's permanent, temporary, general, or special. When you see the word, these two, when you see HR in front with a number in front of a bill, then you should know that it's a bill and not a resolution. And the H in it stands for the House. The House of Representatives has introduced that. Whereas when you see an S, that means that this bill was introduced by the Senate, and they're usually followed by a number based on the order in which they were introduced. Bills are presented to the president for action when approved in identical form by both House and the Senate. So it has to be identical on both sides. So a lot of times you might see national orgs, whether it's CARE or AC, you see lots of like color of change, move on, send out emails asking you to call congressional offices or call or email them about certain bills. And sometimes I know we get this at Justice for All. People will ask us, hey, you just asked us, you just told us this bill passed the House. Why are we calling our Congress people again? And that usually happens when the Senate doesn't agree to the same version, to the version of the bill, and it gets sent back to the House. And so we have to keep the pressure on our representatives because it has to be in identical form in order for it to be passed on and sent to the president. Now, what's a resolution? A resolution is, you can tell when it's a resolution because it will say the words RES or the letters RES after it. So it'll be H-Res and then the numbers. Or if it's introduced in the Senate, it'll be called S-Res. And this is really, really important. So when you are calling Congress, just to make sure, it's really important when you're calling and there's a number and a name for the bill that you're talking about. It's important because they're noting that down. 500 calls came for this bill or against this resolution. So they're noting that down. So it's important to make a note of that. What is the bill number and whether it's a resolution or a bill. Now, resolutions just express the body, the chamber, the Senate, or the House approval or disapproval of something, which they cannot otherwise vote on because it's handled either by a different jurisdiction or it's protected by the Constitution. So what we saw when equating anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism was a resolution. Cannot be made into law. And it will not be presented to the president for action. So that's something, but there are some things called joint resolutions, which I'm not going to go into at this point. So how does a bill become a law? So I wanted to ask a question. Do you think you could present a bill to, you could draft a bill? If you could put your hand up, if you think you can draft a bill.
We also have the chat option open, so if anyone wants to type in their answers as well. Oops.
Okay, so those of you who raised your hands are absolutely correct. You could draft a bill and take it to your congressional offices, to your representative or to your senators, and ask them, request, go in with a meeting. For example, there are laws like the Amber Alert law. Many of these come from communities, come from community organizations, where they will take talking points and a draft of a bill to their congressperson. Now, it's up to the congressperson's office or your senator's office, their staff, their policy staff will look into it. They'll do their research. They'll change they might not use your draft, but the essence of your draft could be made into, and they might decide to introduce that bill. So you would not be able to introduce a bill. Only your congressperson or senator can introduce a bill. Once a bill is introduced, then it goes to committee. And this is where it's important to know how many of your elected officials, what committees do they sit on? What caucuses do they sit on? And once they sit, these committees, for example, right now, some of the important committees as it in response to the crisis that is taking place, the genocide that's happening right now, are the Appropriations Committee, the Foreign Relations Committee, and that's why many of you will see that a lot of folks are putting their effort in targeting those senators who sit on those committees. And many of those committees have subcommittees that might be more concentrated. So now, for example, in the Foreign Relations Committee, that there is a subcommittee that deals with the Middle East. So they have more, they have the ability to hold hearings. And that's another ask that you should be making of your senators, is why hasn't there been a hearing from Palestinian voice, centering Palestinian voices, centering humanitarian aid workers, centering the Muslim community, because all we've heard is that they're having these closed door hearings with the Israeli forces, with ex-ambassadors. There have been several anti-Semitism centered hearings, but none even though actual people who have been impacted by Islamophobia and anti-Palestinian violence in the United States. There's been a young boy killed in Illinois. 3 of those young people in Maine were shot at. So that's, so just going back to that. So then it goes to the committee, they amend it, and then they vote on it. Then it's presented in front of the House or the Senate. A lot of times those are the C-SPAN debates that you might be seeing, and they vote on the bill. Then the bill is referred to the next chamber. If it was in the House, it's referred to the Senate. And then once it passes both chambers, then it goes to the president. Now, for our purposes, right now, for that phone bank that you guys are all on, our goal is to get the ceasefire now resolution passed. Currently has 18 co-sponsors, not one is a Republican. Our goal is to increase calls for ceasefires. So we need to see minimum 100 calls going out from Michigan. You all are part of a national phone bank as well, and you're competing against like Illinois and Michigan and in New Jersey and California and Maryland. So we'd like to see Michigan, beating all of them, because mashallah, you guys have like so much. You've done so much at the local and state level, and we need to see that same energy at the federal level. Now I'm going to thank you, Rashida, for, I was just listening to you, and so much of what is in this is exactly what you were talking about. So the most effective methods to engage with congressional offices, number 1 is district meetings. This, and right now your congresspeople, your senators are on recess. They are in their districts, they're in their states, and I would request all of you go to their websites, and on their websites, you can ask for meetings, ask for a meeting, all of you. You do not need to depend on any national or state organization, but if you do want anybody to help you out with your agenda setting or your preparation or any of that, talking points, of course, refer to folks like the Muslim Coalition that has the Michigan Muslim Coalition, or other national organizations that do this day in and day out. But as constituents, you have absolutely every right to demand meetings with your congresspeople, and they need to see. It's not just the five regular folks that they see on Palestinian issues or Muslim issues, or that are concerned about this. They need to see that there's a variety of folks from Michigan who absolutely are demanding a ceasefire, are absolutely concerned about ending this genocide. And number two is phone calls, especially many phone calls on the same day. Right now, we're in crisis mode. So we are encouraging everybody to make phone calls every day. In regular times, if you called every day about the same thing, staff might think you're a little loopy, okay? But this is a crisis. I mean, when I use the word genocide, I don't use it lightly. I do genocide research on a daily basis. We have worked on the Rohingya Uyghur genocide. Our organization started when the Bosnia genocide was taking place. We've worked on, we were working on India, on Kashmir, on Central African Republic. So the markers, according to the UN Geneva Convention, all those markers are met when it comes to Gaza. And that is why I use the word very, very carefully, and I'm calling it a genocide. And 880 genocide scholars, Holocaust scholars, international law scholars agree and have warned President Biden and the State Department about this. And I'll share that with you because I'd like you to share that with your Senate offices and your elected officials as well, because otherwise they are complicit. We are complicit. What else works is, what happened here? Sorry. What else works is unique personal letters. Writing a letter to the district office is better than sending a generic email or writing a letter to the DC office. That's exactly what Rashida was talking about as well, because there's less gatekeeping at your district offices. When they're in the district, it's much easier for them to learn. And you'll see this in the letters that interns are sending. There's a letter, and I'm going to talk about that at the end. There was a letter from congressional interns about how much of this information is being gatekept from our elected officials. And then standardized template emails are effective when in large volumes. If there's like hundreds and thousands of messages going out saying the same thing. But unique emails are better. Unique personal written letters are even better. Now, this is why your calls matter. As Linda was said, the language is changing in DC. A couple of years ago, just the idea of members of Congress openly discussing the idea of conditioning US aid to Israel was unheard of. And this represents an unexpected shattering of a long-standing taboo in Washington. And this is why your calls are so, so, so important. As you can see, we gave in the 80s, look at the amount, over $15 billion in aid in the 1980s. And now again, in 2023, President Biden has requested an addition $14.3 billion. So, and we're talking about conditioning this. So this is big. Now, this is the season. This is folks like me, our busy season starts in February, March, because that's when usually all the fly-ins happen. That's when the budget is made. And so you are going to see many, many bills coming up at the federal level. And that's why our scripts need to be updated on a regular basis that you are sharing in your phone banking groups. And we cannot let up the pressure at all. What I would also like you guys to do is take out your calendars and mark that in August, each one of you are going to have set up a district meeting with your congresspeople and your senators about Palestine. Just put it on your calendar. because they're going to be in district and that's on recess, and you guys should be meeting them. So just this has to be a lifestyle change. This can't be like, oh, we're going to call now and we have all this energy because we're seeing all dead babies on social media, and then we forget about it. No, we cannot let that happen, because I can assure you that is why we're at this point, but because advocates for more aid to Israel, military aid to Israel, are calling every day. They're calling as Girl Scout troops, they're calling as PTAs, they're calling as grandmas, they're calling in all sorts of ways. They're making sure that they stand with Israel, right? So we have to make a lifestyle change about this. And this is, I know that there are a lot of allies here too, but please bear with me. I urge all of my Muslim brothers and sisters over here to renew your intentions and to make dua before you pick up the phone and call. This is the dua of Musa alayhi salam when he went to the Pharaoh. People ask me, what do we do with people who take money from AIPAC and we can't do anything about them? It's the effort that counts. It's your voice that's being heard. Make dua. You do not know what can change a person's mind. I'll tell you, I give this example a lot of, I don't know if many of you have heard of former Senator Brownback. Senator Brownback was one of the foremost people behind anti-Sharia bills across the country. And if I can tell you today how much, as an ambassador of religious freedom under the Trump administration, he worked for Muslim rights, the right for Muslims to be able to practice globally, and against the Rohingya genocide, against the Uyghur genocide, you'd be so surprised. You'd be so surprised. So don't give up on people. We never know what can change somebody and where they are in their career, where they don't care anymore about, whatever $50,000 or $500,000 they got from AIPAC. So picking up the phone and calling your member of Congress, quick and effective to share your point of view on an issue. Staff keeps track, like Rashida said. And during a time of non-crisis, what staffers tell us is that at least 11 calls from a district on the same day escalates the issue, so that the person picking up the phone call conveys it and escalates it up the chain. Now, who are you speaking to when you pick up the phone? Your phone is usually answered by an intern or staff member whose job is to take note of your perspective and communicate it within the office. So usually this means there's a greeting, your message, and the staffer thanking you. I urge everybody, because we've been hearing cases across the country of some staffers being extremely aggressive, ask for their name. And this is, if you do get someone questioning you, if you're a Hamas supporter or all sorts of nonsense, make sure you got their name and make sure you escalate that. Make sure their elected officials gets to hear about that. Involve civil rights organizations if that's the case, because that's not the job of the staffer or the intern. They're supposed to just take your opinion and not say stuff, aggressive things to you. So I always urge people to identify yourself. This is very, very important. Congressional offices are meant to be working for their constituents. And unless there's a direct action where Linda gets up and says, jam their lines or something like that, we need people to be advocating inside offices. We need people, so they need to know who you are. So I would, say, my name is Hina Zuberi. I'm a constituent from, whatever zip code you're in. You can give them your address. And ask, who am I speaking with? Take down their name. It's a conversation. Let them know I'm calling about Palestine and Israel. And if this is a call to my senator, I would say the senator must take immediate steps to de-escalate by calling for a total and permanent ceasefire. Number two, I would like more humanitarian aid to be allowed to enter Gaza and to end Israel's siege on Gaza. Because we want to let them know ceasefire is the least of our demands. It's the most important demand right now, but it's the least of our demands. We ask them to please vote no on supplemental funding package to send more weapons to Israel, and let them know that I support a permanent ceasefire along with 62 Congress members and 61% of American voters. I urgently am asking the senator to publicly call for a ceasefire. And I would like a response. Now, why would you say all of this? Okay, first let me answer this. How often should I call them? Call them at least once a day. Call your 2 senators and your elected official. Call the White House on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays between 11 to 3 EST. They don't pick up otherwise. So 11 to 3 EST, White House. You can even call the State Department. There's I can share that number with you all too. They need to hear from you all at least once a day. Why do we ask for a response? So remember, congressional staffers are extremely busy. Congressional offices are bombarded with letters and inquiries, and they're always dealing with all sorts of issues, right? Foreign policy is one thing, domestic policy, education, animal rights, all sorts of stuff, right? So priority is given, because budgets are limited. Priority is given to letters and inquiries that require an answer. This also makes the person noting down what you're saying stop to actually think about what you're saying. They're not on automated, they're not just giving automated responses. They actually have to slow down and think about, okay, these people want an answer. What are they saying? And really focus. Because imagine you're picking up the phone every day, and folks are saying all sorts of stuff. So when you're on the call you can adjust your message with any personal touches you want to include. So there are scripts that many of these things, like Justice for All has a script out. There's the US Campaign for Palestine. They have 5 calls. All sorts of folks have scripts out. Your phone bank has scripts out. But you can always change up the script and put in personal touches. If you're a nurse, if you're a doctor, if you're a grandma, if you are you make furniture, you build houses, whatever, however this calamity is touching you personally, say that. They need to hear the different perspectives from and the variety of people. Now, if no one answers or the voicemail is full, try calling later or call your local or state office. Do leave a voicemail. Like Rashida said, it is being transcribed, and make sure to include your name, your address, and zip code at the start of your message, so your message is noted. Again, go off script. The most compelling and effective letters and phone calls combine a thoughtful approach to policy issues with a careful explanation of why it's important to you and the members' community. So if there has been a rise in Islamophobia in your community, talk about that. Talk if there has been mental health issues. I mean, I can tell you that in Maryland, we're seeing a rise with so many young people, especially in the Muslim community, in the Palestinian community. And if you're a mental health worker, talk about that. And why is this important to you? To see, every day that your tax money is being used to bomb to smithereens people, but you don't have, here in Baltimore, 1 out of 2 people are living under poverty. So when they tell us they don't have enough money to get rid of student debt and to get free healthcare for all, but they have enough money to keep sending bombs, they need to hear that from us, and especially the Republicans who keep talking, go on and on about, taxpayers' rights and all of that. And these personalized letters and phone messages are a lot of times ones that the elected officials often see, compared to the generic template kind of stuff that people send in. So I don't know how much time I have, but I'm going to go into this very quickly. This is usually
keep on going, Hina. You're good.
So you guys have been doing phone banking. You've been doing amazing, and we're going to keep. You listen to the admins in your phone banking group. Do what they're telling you to do, please. Like, they're doing the hard work of updating the scripts and all of that. All you guys need to do is pick up the phone. It takes 5 minutes, and just put, you're actually making a difference. But aside from this, the next step is we want you to start asking for those meetings. This is like, they need to see you guys. They need to see you face to face, because it's very hard to say the stuff like they say on the form letters that they mail out to you in responses, when they have to say it to your face. And bring in people from the community. Perhaps they're Palestinians who've lost family members. Perhaps there are other impacted groups. Take someone in, but we'll talk about that a little bit more. The first step, the first strategy to impact influence to elected officials is learn about whom you're trying to influence. This is so important. Who are they? What do they vote for? What are they trying to do? What do they bring to the community? One more thing I'm going to also say, just a do not, I missed this a little earlier, is please, I've seen these in some phone bank groups, please do not leak congressional staffers' phone numbers and bombard them with calls. That is not fair. A lot of these people are really, really good people. They might be working for people who have been bought out by AIPAC money, but a lot of them really, really feel for especially this cause. And so it's really not fair for them to be bombarded like that. All your mail, all your phone calls should be targeted at your elected official. So that's something I just wanted to clarify, because I've seen this in some phone banking groups, and I absolutely do not agree with that. So we're going to go back to who are we trying to influence. So you get to know your elected official, read up on their bio in detail, read up on what committees they serve on, check out the resolutions or the bills they've sponsored, find points to appreciate them. These are people. Many times they want a point of connection. So get to know them and see what they've been tweeting about, and tweet back at them. Like, that's a way you can, influence them, right? Because they're seeing that you're a constituent, you're tweeting at them, and building that rapport with them. And I know this sounds really terrible at this point, but I'm going to go back. I don't know if I talked about this in the beginning, but there's the difference. But what we're doing right now is we're mobilizing people, right? We're mobilizing people because there's a crisis and there's a genocide. But this is not a fight that began on October 7th, and it's not going to end, even if there is a ceasefire. We need people to be organizing, and organizing means building long-term relationships with these offices, with these staffers, with these elected officials. Today, they could be in your state senate. Tomorrow, they could be running for House, and tomorrow running for president. You never know. So it's a good idea for folks who care about human rights to have long-term relationships with these offices, because a lot of times we move from crisis to crisis, whereas the folks who are pro-war and pro-killing people are in their offices and seeing them on a daily basis. For example, let's look at some of your representatives. Here's representative from your 4th district, Bill Uzenga. He's really important, and he's important because he sits on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. And this committee has jurisdiction over national security as it pertains to foreign policy, as well as oversight over the deployment and use of US armed forces. Additionally, the committee oversees dual-use technology issues, matters pertaining to arms control, and a host of international programs and entities. So I would be outside this guy's office every day, honestly. He is super important. Unfortunately, you guys know local politics more than I do, but I'm letting you know that he needs to be addressed on a daily basis because of the committee he's sitting on. This is Representative Slotkin. She also sits on a very important committee, the House Armed Services Committee. She also sits on the subcommittee on intelligence and special operations. She's in fact the vice chair. She's also former CIA and former State Department. And so she did vote against censuring Sister Rashida, but she also sits on this super important Armed Services Committee. And so you guys should be bombarding her on a daily basis as well. Representative Haley Stevens. We were just talking about Americans being stuck in Gaza. She is the Congressperson co-chair of the Congressional Task Force on American Hostages and Americans Wrongfully Detained Abroad. I think she fits quite well into the scheme of things, and we should have strategy around this, targeting her. She also sits on the House Committee on Education and the Workforce and Science, Space, and Technology. So all your social workers and teachers, Teachers Against Genocide need to be meeting her because our school funding keeps getting cut at the federal level, whereas our, Armed Services Committee Armed Services budget keeps rising. These are your senators. I wanted to just go into a little bit. Both your senators do not sit on the Foreign Relations Committee, but they do sit on some other important committees. Gary Peters is the chairman of the Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee. And also, major, he sits on the Senate Appropriations Committee, which allocates federal resources to government agencies, our national defense, and organizations on an annual basis. So he is super important. He also sits on other environment and military construction affairs, so there are other unrelated sort of subcommittees that he sits on, but because of this, and so strategy around him needs to be based on the committees he serves on. So if we're going to be, so that this is something that perhaps we can have a follow-up where you all divide into the districts that you are in, and we build up agendas and build strategy around each district and around each senator. He also, something very important about him, he also just was the lead sponsor on Combating Human Rights Abuses Act. Yeah. So this act is targeted against China, but it could so easily be used against Israel as well. So folks who are reaching out to his office need to bring that up, that he cannot be for human rights in China, but not be for human rights of Palestinians. Senator Stabenow, she sits on the agricultural, nutrition, forestry. She's the chairman of that. Not super related to any of this, but she's on the committee of the budget and finance committee. These are also two very important committees, especially in January and February, because all these bills go to the budget and finance committees during February. And the Senate Finance Committee is the most influential committee in the US Senate and has jurisdiction over a wide range of issues important to Michigan. All legislation regarding Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, trade policy, pensions, and tax policy is referred to the Finance Committee. So again, change your tactics. If what hasn't been working, change your tactics. Use this information to really think about what we can get her on. So again, I'm going to reiterate this. The next goal is meetings. Each member of your Congress has an office in Washington, D.C., and typically several local offices located throughout the district and state. Reach out to their office schedulers to get your in-district or state meeting set up. And you can do this on their website, and they have their office schedulers. You can call their local district offices and do it that way as well. If you need to reach out to me, if you need helpful tips or information, such as talking points or suggestions to help you get prepared for your meeting, I'm available, and we can have someone help you out with that. But this is like, I would like to remove all gatekeeping from this. It's our national organizations are super important. Our state organizations are super important. But in this moment of crisis, they need to be hearing from the average person, because all of us are against this genocide. When you go in for the meeting, you need to prepare for it. Like, we can't go in willy-nilly, right? So how do you prepare for this meeting? You need to meet with everyone who is going to be going to the meeting. So suppose it's a group of 10 people, try to make it varied, try to have maybe some clergy in it, maybe some impacted people, maybe allies, a rabbi, interfaith leaders, humanitarian aid workers, a doctor, who, some folks who have different perspectives, and meet with them beforehand and make an agenda. Take notes of what you plan to talk about, just like in any meeting. When you're going into any meeting, even if it's for work or something, you have an agenda. If it's a group meeting, always pick a leader who will begin first and then name the next person to speak. So that way you're like sort of maintaining control over the meeting. Otherwise, it can quickly spiral out of control. Divide up the talking points so no one repeats the same thing. And give those folks, tell them to research those talking points and have them listed down on the agenda, so you all know what someone is going to be saying, so you aren't saying something that's just out of the blue. Like recently I was in a meeting and I was just really, it was a really great meeting. We had an impacted young woman who lost that week 40 of her family members, make a very emotional plea. We'd been, setting it up. We spoke about what is, genocide. We spoke about humanitarian aid, Leahy's law, a lot of other things. And then we had her, and then, we wanted our senator to get back to tell us. It was a meeting face to face with him. And then suddenly someone who was not in our meeting, a prep meeting, spoke up and said, oh, I'd like to say something. And she said, oh, I love you, and I voted for you, and I'd always vote for you. And it just took the entire air out of the room. It just sucked the air out of the room, because it was just so uncalled for at that point. Like, it really could have been said some other time, if that's, she has a right to say something too. But it really, like, keep to the agenda and don't take more than a couple of minutes to say what you want to share. Prepare questions for them, so you can ask them those questions. The more your elected officials speak, that's better for us, because we want them to explain to us their position on how they are okay with being complicit in war crimes. Check how much time you have and keep to the time. And always prepare a leave behind packet, whether it's just a letter from all the 10 of you that have gone in and listing out your asks. The asks are your demands. So number one demand, we're asking for a permanent ceasefire. If they've already asked for a ceasefire, which your two haven't, so that's going to be your number one demand. Number two demand could be no additional fund, voting no on the additional military aid, et cetera, et cetera. So list them out in the order of importance, and then leave that packet behind. You can take in, we've had here on the Hill, we've been distributing binders filled with stuff that you guys are all seeing on Instagram, but your elected officials aren't. They're not maybe seeing the same people. They're not following Wissam and Palestine and all of that, right? So prepare a leave behind packet. Like my senator loves to have printouts of articles. He likes to circle them. That's the way he likes to interact with the stuff that we leave behind with him. But unless you get to know your senators, you won't know that. And maybe talk to people who've gone in to meet with them before to know where they left off. So you guys are building up on each other's meetings. Once you're in there, always introduce yourself, make the core ask, put your story behind the ask and support the ask with facts. Say thank you. You can always request a photo if you want to, but if you don't want to, that's fine too, because a lot of times we just have photo ops and don't really have demands. So always have demands ready with you. I would also really suggest that follow-up is extremely important. Once you've met them, then now you have that Congress, and it's okay to take a meeting with a congressperson or senator staff. Policy staffers are experts. They sometimes know way more than your congresspeople because they are focused on that subject. And they are looking for people in the community who can become a reliable expert. So when you're sending in, like Rashida said, hey, this article that I came across, or look, they bombed another hospital, you are becoming a reliable expert on for them. At this point, don't exaggerate, fact check what you're saying, don't lie. If they ask you a question during the meeting that you don't know the answer to, there's no harm in saying, you know what, I'm not an expert on that. Let me get back to you on that. There's no harm in saying that. So that is how you build a relationship with that office. And always, again, I'm going to emphasize this over and over and over again, tell a personal story. Why is this important to you? You are their constituent. And then communicate frequently. Follow up is key. So if you don't, if you call for a meeting and you don't hear back in a couple of days, call them up again, email them. If you've had a meeting, within 3 days, send them a soft copy of your letter or your leave behind packet. Follow up with, in a week's time, follow up with, hey, I haven't seen the congressperson ask for a ceasefire. Why haven't you asked for a ceasefire? What more can we do to make sure that you're going to be calling and asking for a ceasefire? So it's like a process, really. And I think, if you have any salespeople in your communities, they are awesome at this. They're great at cold calling. They have all the skills, and they're good at, if you have good closers, they can make that deal. Those are the sort of people, add them on to your group, because a lot of times activists, we live in a bubble, and we need to be pulling in other people from the community who have these skills. So follow up is absolute, that is gold. You have to follow up. And at that time, when the Congress, your staffer gives you a card, now they've given you permission to communicate with them. So at that point, yes, call them, email them, say, hey, we were supposed to meet up. Can we have a follow-up meeting, maybe on Zoom? You can do that. But what I said before was you wouldn't give out that number to every XY, just on a random group chat and start having people bombarding them. I don't think that's fair to them. So I just wanted to, before finishing up, just say that there's several more horrific legislation coming up in the House and Senate. There's weaponizing anti-Semitism claims to target academia. There's targeting free speech supportive of Palestinian rights. There's targeting UNRWA and Palestinian aid. Yet again, there are some positive ones as well. Senate Resolution 504 that Bernie Sanders finally put out has no co-sponsors yet, not one. So that's another ask that you can make of your Senate offices. There's a resolution in the House for more humanitarian aid for Gaza, which is HRES 935. And there are many more that are coming up. So just, our work has just gotten started. It hasn't ended, but there are lots and lots of people behind you. And I'm just going to leave you all with just this message from the Congressional Interns letter. And they say that the senior staff is deliberately providing inaccurate information about this data to members. And, your messages are being heard. They say the volume of calls asking for ceasefire has eclipsed calls for other popular issues like gun control and immigration. And this is the most important thing. They say to the people calling congressional offices to voice their concerns and those who are tired of watching this massacre unfold. Know that we as congressional interns and fellows hear and see you. We may not be the highest ranking in our offices, but we will continue to do everything in our power to ensure a permanent ceasefire is achieved, even when members of Congress fail to do so. And what gives me hope is these young people are going to be our leaders tomorrow, inshallah.
Thank you so much, Hina. Our chats are